Mayday here. 82, we have smoke in the cabin.
Contact, pilot maintain.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the August 2022 session of Galactic Terrors, the online reading series that scours the known universe for scary stories, strange tales, weird horror, dark humor, and all sorts of literary oddities from the most imaginative authors writing in a variety of fascinating genres. I am James Chambers, and with me is my co-host, Carol Gyzander.
Hi, I'm Carol Gyzander. Great to see everybody.
Welcome back to those of you who have been here before. We have an exciting lineup tonight, some spectacular readers who are going to share their work with us. We are joined tonight by McLeod Chapman, Brian Matthews, and Nancy Holder. And we have some exciting stories coming up. And we'll, of course, take questions from you throughout the broadcast. You can put questions in the chat at any time, and we will put those questions to our readers, so feel free to ask the most personal, probing.
No, don't do that. No.
Yes,
about their literary works. Yes. You're bad, Jim. You're bad.
I am sorry. It's the heat and humidity we were just talking about. It's getting to me.
It's been rather warm in the New York City area. Many people are going through this. It's a good thing there's no such thing as climate change, right?
Right. Well, the good news is, as I think you put in our notes for this evening, it's only 81 days until Halloween, and things are usually a little cooler and drier by that time of year, so it should be fun.
Mm-hmm. That's the most important fact of the entire evening. So we can just go home now. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So I love what's behind you, Jim. You've got somebody circling overhead. Ooh,
that's it. Yeah, I've got some ravens and a spooky house. This is I took this photo actually in the elevator corridor at the Curtis Hotel at StokerCon in Denver back in May. I was lucky enough to be on the horror themed floor, which had a lot of cool stuff, including this neat decoration and wallpaper but printed with skulls. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What could go wrong there? Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's terrific. Well, speaking of all the Halloween people who were at Stoker, the hotel is open for StokerCon 2023. It's coming up in Pittsburgh, June 15th through 18th. And if folks are interested in that, they can go to stokercon2023.com for a little bit more information.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We just finished just seems like it's just over, but we're going to go back again and do it again.
Yep. It always comes sooner than you think, but not quite soon enough sometimes. But in other HWA news, we have some elections coming up in the Horror Writers Association. So I think a number of trustee positions, 3 trustee positions, president and secretary. So for active members, voting members, look for the ballots to go out around September 7th.
Yeah. And due back September 16th. And I didn't realize this, but the new terms start on November 1st and go until October 31, which I just find absolutely hysterical for Halloween people. The end of your term is Halloween. So
that's it. So if you're not reelected, you get to have a really good Halloween that year.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. Well, we have some other fun stuff going on within the HWA world and on the website. There are quite a few interesting features that they do on the horror.org blog. And one of our past Galactic Terrors authors, who has read with us before, Nicole Givens Kurtz, she was here in February 2021. She's featured in the current Black Heritage in Horror interview up on the blog. So that's worth taking a look at. We love seeing our folks that come here on Galactic Terrors, whether they're from our New York chapter or from outside. We love to see what's going on with everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Check things out. Follow the blog. For Galactic Terrors, we also have a bit of news. Actually, a couple of bits of news. One, a little nuts and bolts. The other, a little fun. So we'll start with the nuts and bolts, which is that we have created a Galactic Terrors Facebook group, which is new. I'm going to throw the link in the chat here. If you have not already joined, we encourage anyone interested in Galactic Terrors to request to join. We kept it kind of a semi-private group just so that we can avoid trolling and spamming and all sorts of stuff like that. But it's kind of open to anyone who really wants to just follow what we're doing at Galactic Terrors and learn about the authors who read with us. So we're going to start posting a lot of information about our authors there every month. That also goes into the newsletter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which you can check out.
Yeah, people may not realize that we have. There it is. There's our newsletter. People may not realize that we have one, but we send it. We do not spam. I don't believe in spam.
Right.
I was a scout leader for 15 years, so you can trust me. I don't send excessive spam and such. But we send a newsletter with saying who's coming up this month, and then one that same day with the links, just to make it easy and such. But we're doing something fun now. Yeah. A couple of us have volunteered to offer some ebooks for anybody who's on our newsletter mailing list by midnight tonight, Eastern Daylight Time. We'll pull 3 names off the list and send each of them one of these the ebooks. One from Jim, one from Brian, and I have a punk horror anthology of stories to send out. So please feel free to join up, and you'll get first news on what's coming up in the upcoming sessions and a free ebook if you were one of the winners.
Yes, that would be great. That's exciting. And I decided I'll be giving away a copy of The Dead Bear Witness.
Mm-hmm.
A little zombie pulp fun for anyone who likes The Walking Dead or zombies in general. Or I actually don't call them zombies, but I won't get into that. We've got other things to do tonight.
Oh, that's a whole fun discussion. Yeah,
exactly. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to Nicholas Dyack, who took a joke I made last month about the gin and tonic, or G&T, being the official cocktail of Galactic Terrors. And of course, Nick, being the creative cocktail master that he is, decided to give us a Galactic Terrors spin on the gin and tonic, which you can see here. And this is made, as Nick reported online, with a key lime instead of a regular lime. So you get that fancy ring around the regular lime, as if this was a ring around a planet. And of course, there's a star there for the galactic part. So thank you, Nick, for giving us a signature drink.
Mm-hmm. And with a star in it and everything. So yeah, I picture Nick having one right now. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but a toast to Nick.
Yeah, to Nick. All right, so we're going to jump into our readings in just a minute. Please like and subscribe. There's some buttons below. I keep getting updated information about what those really do, but the one consistent thing is that the more people that like and subscribe, the faster your internet will run. Apparently, liking and subscribing things on YouTube increases general internet speeds. I have this on good authority from...
sorry. Yeah.
No, come on, it can't be. I mean, I got that straight from Elon Musk, yes. Or at least, but I saw that on Twitter, but his last name was misspelled, so I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't take that too seriously.
Perhaps not.
All right.
Yeah.
But okay. Without further ado, I think we will get into our readings, the main attraction. That's what you're all here for tonight, and I will hand things off to Carol to introduce our first reader.
Excellent. Well, we have Clay McLeod Chapman, who writes comic books, children's books, and writes for film and TV. His most recent novels include The Remaking, Whisper Down the Lane, and the upcoming Ghost Eaters from Quirk Books. You can find him at claymcleodchapman.com. Clay?
Oh, that's amazing. I wish every introduction was that way. Thank you so much, guys. It's wonderful to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Clay, and I get to read first tonight. I'll be the warm up for the evening. And yeah, I wrote a new book, and it's called Ghost Eaters, and it's from Quirk Books, and it comes out on September 20th. So I'm now in that place of trying desperately to figure out what to read from it and how to read from it. So I figured I would use this as an opportunity to kind of do a test run. I think I'm going to read the first chapter. This is the prologue, so there's really nothing you need to know other than that the narrator of this book is a young woman by the name of Erin. So without any further ado, this is Ghost Eaters. Tripping our asses off in the cemetery was Silas's idea. We dose back at his dorm to give the acid a head start. And by the time we abandon campus and hop the wrought iron fence surrounding Hollywood Cemetery, the four of us are well on our way to peak Fry. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Amara keeps repeating under her breath a giddy litany. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Remember your partners, Silas whispers as he scales the fence first. He just high jumps it, high jumps those spikes like some grave robbing Olympian. Now that is some gold medal trespassing. Oh, poor Tobias can't seem to find a foothold on the fence. His tattered Vans keep slipping, reminding me of that puny kid on the playground who doesn't have the upper body strength to pull himself up onto the monkey bars on his own. He's too embarrassed to ask for help, shooing Silas's hand away whenever he offers it. I got it, he keeps muttering to himself. Amara and I are now the only ones left on the street, so we plant our hands on Tobias's scrawny ass and just like heave-ho him over. I can literally feel the bone in his butt cheek as we push. And from where I'm standing, it looks like he takes flight for a moment, just a beanpole of a bat flapping his wings through the bruised purple sky. Amara is next. She starts to shriek, practically impaling herself on one of the rusted spears. And we all sure try to, at least, in between laughing our asses off. She flips over the fence and falls flat on her face. It is far too dark for me to see her land. Silas won't let us use the flashlights on our cell phones. So there is a hot second where I worry if Amara has cracked open her skull on a tombstone or something, but she is cackling like an absolute candy flipping witch, rolling around in the grass, so we know that she's still breathing. Come on, Erin. Silas beckons me through the bars. He's gripping them both in his hands, leaning his face in through the gap. He's a convict, and I have come to break him out. It's your turn. I can't help myself. His face is right there, lips right there. I lean in and kiss him through the fence. Flecks of rust dig into my cheeks, smearing my makeup. Here comes the lockjaw. Jesus, guys, Amara whispers, but not really whispers. Get a tomb already. Suddenly, I'm second guessing myself. I can't climb over this. What if I lose my footing and I fall on one of those spikes? Easy does it, Silas says. I've got you. Silas and Tobias each grab a foot and hoist me up while I pull onto the top rail. Imagine a cheerleader pyramid where those two strapping young lads just lift me over their heads and I perform the most absolute fucking perfect hip overhead airborne tumble you have ever seen. Both feet landing directly on a headstone, a total bring it on, crowd goes wild, dismount. You would be wrong. I land on my ass, hard. Silas suddenly is hovering just above me. Are you okay? I think I broke my hip. Oh, you'll live, Silas says. Take my hand. Silas says, hop on one foot. Silas says, pat your head, touch your nose. Silas didn't say. The four of us take in the meandering rows of tombstones tilting like loose teeth. The cemetery is called Hollywood because a few Richmond natives became celebrities way back whenever. You're returning home only after they kick the bucket to get buried in their native soil. Everyone returns to Richmond someday. Mostly, this place is full of dead Confederates, but there are a few forgotten starlets in the ground. Tourists take photos next to their gaudy graves, but tonight, hours after the cemetery gates close and the only occupants are 6 feet below, all 135 acres of this place belong to us. Follow me, Silas says. Watch your step. Tobias trips on cue. Tripping while tripping, huh? Yeah, he's practically blind on the best of days, even with his wire rim specs. Swap out the daylight for some liquid sunshine and add a few granite stumbling blocks, and it is no wonder that he can't stay on his feet. Where are we going? I have to ask. You'll see. Silas never tells us what he's got hidden up his sleeves. I mean, that would ruin the surprise, wouldn't it? I mean, he has the uncanny ability to rally the troops, enlist the rest of us to do just about whatever he wants. And what he wants most out of life is just to go, 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 go. His lust for life is addictive and thrilling and downright exhausting all at once. I mean, who cares if we have class tomorrow morning? I mean, haven't we realized that academia is just merely for the sheep? Silas says that we are better than all of those undergrad lemmings. And I mean, who are we to argue? I mean, sounds good to me. I mean, he can somehow convince us to forget our inhibitions, to lose ourselves in the white heat of the moment, to hop trains in the dead of night, to embark upon random road trips with no destination, to take jaunts through haunted plantations that last until the sun rises over abandoned tobacco fields. This city is ours, he says. The four musketeers, all for one and one for Silas. Ah, something just bit me, Amara groans as she smacks her palm against her bare shoulder. Figures that she didn't dress appropriately for grave robbery. I mean, how much further do we have to go? She asks. Almost there. Can you just tell us where we're going? I mean, I'm getting eaten alive out here. Patience, Silas says. Good things come to those who wait. A cherub perched on a pillar twists its neck toward me just as I pass it. I stop to make sure, staring at the chubby naked baby with brittle wings. Its washed out eyes blink back at me. Oh, good. I guess I'm not just imagining it. I'm glad I cleared that up. Its chiseled features have been sanded down, all the decades of rain and cold erasing its face to a gray plain. But it still has its eyelids opening and closing over two slopes of stone, a pair of rotten eggs stuffed in its sockets. The headstone is too small for it to be an adult. Oh shit, a baby is buried here. Did I just say that out loud? I can't tell for sure. Aaron? Silas takes hold of my arm, bringing me back. Are you okay? Yeah. Are you sure? Uh-huh, uh-huh. Stay with me now, he says, taking my hand and leading me through the undulating row of graves. And in my head, I think it's in my head, I say, stay with me, stay with me, stay. The headstones just won't keep still. I mean, the marble flexes, tombstones turn as I walk by. They may as well be dancing toadstools. They're inscribed umbrella caps just bopping along. Beloved wife, in loving memory, gone too soon, absent in body, present in spirit. I just have to keep my cool. I just have to keep my cool. Breathe in deep. Don't freak. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Amara keeps reciting. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? We are pushing the boundaries, I imagine Silas might say. We are living life to its fullest. We are turning this city into our own personal playground and howling at the moon. But Silas keeps quiet, silently guiding us through the bopping headstones. He just won't talk. won't peek out from his shell. I mean, the acid isn't helping. I can tell. I don't know. I don't want to know what personal horror movie is projecting across the inside of his skull right now, but I don't care. And my world is just me and Silas, my hand in his. He's leading me along, always my guide. I don't know if my feet are touching the ground anymore. I could be a balloon for all I know. My arm is a string, and Silas is running through the cemetery while I whip in the wind. Here we are, he says, stopping before a mausoleum that seems to be some bizarro cross-section of Masonic and Egyptian architecture. The concrete is covered in kudzu. Nope, nope, nope. Scratch that. It's spray paint. I have to squint to make out what's scrawled across the vault. But even then, the warped words, don't want to keep still long enough for me to read them. All I can actually make out is "Rise, Revenant of Richmond, rise." And I think that's 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clay. That was fantastic. Really,
Thank you.
I think people were feeling the energy. Yes, definitely. I know Nicholas
Yeah.
was. So
Thank
actually,
you, Nicholas.
What's that?
Thank you, Nicholas.
But that, I mean, it's a great segue for really the first question I have for you, which is your writing background is very broad. You've written novels, short stories, comics, nonfiction. You've written plays, I think, too, right? Drama, and you're involved with films. So I was going to ask you about, do you have like a performance and theatrical background? I'm guessing that you do, of some kind.
I mean, the ham has a chance to come out. So I mean, that's the great thing about first person. You get you do a live reading, you do a presentation like this, and the text comes alive.
Yes, definitely. It's a lot of fun. But is there one area that you consider your home, or where you started out as a writer? Was it drama? Was it prose, comics?
You're gonna make me pick. You're gonna make me pick my favorite child.
No, not favorite. Just everybody started somewhere, so
that's true. I mean, it's funny because yes, I would say theater was definitely the foundation. That's where I began. I mean, as early as a kid. But what I did find, and I do think I owe it to writers. I mean, Moby Dick, Call Me Ishmael. There's a particular poet by the name of I, spelled AI, she wrote these first person narratives, and I love the idea of like a duality of text. So that it could be a short story to one person, but it could be a monologue to another. But the text itself doesn't change. So my first book, which is a collection of short stories called Rest Area, it was all of these character monologues, and somehow I had convinced the publishing industry to consider them short stories, and somehow I also convinced the theater people to think of them as monologues.
That's really cool. Yeah, I like that concept of the piece working on more than one level. So that, I guess in that sense, voice must be very important to your writing. Character voice. But also, do you find that you wrestle at all with character voice and your voice as an author? I'm asking questions, Clay.
No, it's, I mean, if we're being totally honest, I mean, I feel like they're all me. I'm just a one-trick pony. I think of someone like Tom Waits. It's a very distinct, I mean, you hear a Tom Waits song and that's a Tom Waits song. You listen to a Nick Cave song and that's a Nick Cave song. Even if Tom Waits or Nick Cave take on the persona of a character. Right. And I always found that quite endearing, which is also a way to kind of maybe mask my own limitations as a writer, where I love the idea of yes, all the stories start with a perspective. I mean, growing up down south, like in the land of Poe, we're all. I feel like I'm just aping Edgar, left and right. Where if I could distill that kind of narrative force of, hello, I'm the narrator of the story. Take my hand. I will walk you through this tale. And I'm not crazy, but do you hear that heartbeat through the floorboards? Yeah, I just murdered my neighbor. And like I love that. I love that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think all of us writing dark fiction are working in the shadow of Poe to some extent, but it's something that I find, and it was great to see you bring the voice alive in your reading and really bring the emotion across, which is always fun. But I'm curious too about, and in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those up in the chat. We're happy to ask them. But I'm curious a little bit too. Now, you've written quite a bit in the comics field, and prose and comics are two very different forms of writing. Do you find it difficult to change gears?
I mean, if what I find interesting about the kind of the transition from one medium to the next is, if I'm lucky, the story tends to dictate how it wants to be told. So certain stories, it's very evident that they would be better suited for a comic, or better suited for a film, or a short story. I do think it's arguable if I do any of these well. I mean, I do feel like a kind of master of none, but like you do find kind of commonalities between screenwriting and comic writing, and there's a certain kind of there's certain kind of qualities of comic writing that I love to think of in terms of my fiction writing. So like comic writing is all about one gesture, or the one image or movement distilled in, like the one movement or action distilled into the single image.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can execute something like that, or some version of that or equivalent of that in fiction writing, that's you've just learned, like you've just Hemingwayed yourself. Like there's an economy to text where, like, I tend to get very purple and flowery and florid with my fiction, but the comic writing kind of keeps me honest. And it's like, what is the most important thing here? Can you distill it, reduce it to the gesture or the movement or the kind of motion that propels the story forward?
Yeah. And in comics, you have a limitation, a hard limitation as to how many words you can put on a comics page, and not, annoy the artist to the point where they don't want to work with you. But I'm wondering, you mentioned a commonality between comics and screenwriting. Do you see a commonality between comics and theater at all?
Oh my God, that's a good question. I mean, theater is interesting because, I mean, in an interesting way, I think of all of these different forms of writing as communications. Like there's a conversation going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think first and foremost with comic writing, and this is coming from the writer, so an artist would say something completely different, but I feel as the storyteller, the person I'm communicating with or having a conversation with in comic books is the artist. And we're kind of finding this discourse between the two of us that ultimately ends up being the kind of symbiosis of our conversation, and becomes the end result, the comic itself. With theater, you're having a conversation with the audience. I love direct address, like speaking to the audience, because it's one of the only opportunities where I think artists have the opportunity to engage with the people who are partaking in the art itself. And if you're performing it, if you're a part of the process of producing, mounting it, performing it, you get to firsthand see how that conversation is going with your audience. So I don't know if it answers your question, but I do think that, like, when I focus on a specific medium, and how to tell a story within that medium, whether it's film writing or theater or fiction. Like I'm always trying to think of who's on the other side of that, and how are they engaging with the material. So, and that goes all across the board. And being very specific, and like, this is like, I am talking to you, dear reader, or I'm talking to you, audience member, or I'm talking to you, fellow comic artist.
So it's always a conversation to some extent. It's a participatory thing, not just
I think so.
I wrote this and somebody reads it.
I mean, I want to believe so, yeah, because it's lonely if it's just like I wrote it and there you go. Like, you know, like we're, you know, this writing is in of itself such a solitary act that, you know, I have to think like, you know, pray that someone's on the other side, or I'm just gonna go shack wacky.
All right. And one last question, and then I think we'll go on to Brian. But I'm just curious: do you write mostly horror or dark fiction, or do you write in other genres or non-genre?
It definitely it hews to the darker end of the spectrum for sure. You know, it's so funny. Like my first two books, the publisher would not call them horror. And this was 200 years ago, before there was like an actual, like, it was in that weird kind of era when Barnes and Noble didn't have a horror section to like put books on. Like I was found in the literature, the fiction, you know, shelf, which was wonderful. But I think you know, horror was such a dirty word back then, but like it was, and I think that, like, as a disciple of Poe, like I do think that there is this notion of I don't know, like it might not have a monster, it might not have a vampire or any bloodletting, but like if it's a person you don't want to talk to or meet in an alleyway, I think that's kind of where my stuff tends to reside.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you so much for the reading and for chatting with us. We'll have you back on at the end for a roundup and to hear what you have coming up. Yeah. And we definitely want to hear when that will be out. So great. Well, thank you very much, Clay. I'm going to introduce Brian now. All right. Thank you. All right. So our next reader tonight is Brian Matthews. Brian is the author of the Forever Man series of books, as well as the standalone novella, The Conveyance. He's also published several short stories. His first published work, Lament, appeared in the cyberpunk anthology Foreshadows, The Ghost of Zero, which paired short stories with tracks from a CD included with the book. Brian is a member of the Thriller Writers Association and the Horror Writers Association, where he serves as trustee, and has helped run several of the HWA's annual conventions called StokerCon. He holds degrees from the University of Michigan and Eastern Michigan University. In his early years, he worked as a child psychologist. For the last 25 years, he has worked as a certified financial planning professional. Brian is married and has 3 daughters. He lives to golf, to travel, and, obviously, to write. Welcome, Brian.
Hello there, everybody. Did you catch that really nifty Weird Tales cover on that intro? That's going to be the cover to the Sword and Sorcery issue of Weird Tales, coming out probably later this month. And my reading today is going to be from the short story that I have in that edition called Tem the Riven. So we're going to get started here. And here we go. The sun had dipped below the horizon when Tem the Riven reached the border town of Kithsbarrow. One of the oldest holdfasts in the kingdom, it had survived war, famine, and invasions by simply being tough. Tem entered through the northern gate. Most of the inns lay to the east with their view of the mountains. He eschewed them for this visit. Instead, he nudged his horse west and south, traveling along muddy roads, passing noisy taverns, merchants closing up shop for the night, a few brothels drawing their own share of visitors, until he came to his destination, a house as unassuming as the woman who lived there. No brightly painted colors or frivolous decorations, just dully stained wood, functional windows, and a door with a plain wooden latch. He frowned. The meager grounds appeared untended. Weeds sprouted unchallenged everywhere he looked. The sill on one window had cracked long ago. Water overflowed from a neglected barrel set under a drain spout and formed a small pool at its base. Tem dismounted, then knocked on the door. Receiving no answer, he tried the latch and found the door bolted. Dusty pieces of cloth covered the windows. A young boy wearing a grubby tunic stopped to watch him. "Knocking won't do you no good," the lad said. "The place has been empty for more than a year." "Do you know the woman who lived here?" The boy shook his head. "How about the blacksmith? Is his shop still open?" "He's there," the boy said. "Old Ollie ain't got nothing better to do." Tem removed 2 copper coins from his purse and tossed them to the boy. Dirty hands snatched them from the air. The boy shot him an uncertain smile, as if worried Tem might request the money back, then ran off. Tem rode the short distance to his next destination. The blacksmith shop hugged the southwest corner of Kithsbarrow, nearest the river. Constructed of thick oak beams blackened by decades of exposure to heat and soot, it looked more solid than most of the surrounding buildings. Tem found the blacksmith inside, near the large stone forge. He held one end of an iron bar with a gloved hand, the other end engulfed in the roaring flames. As Tem approached, the blacksmith set the glowing metal on a nearby anvil and picked up a hammer. He was about to strike when he noticed movement and lifted his head. "Tem!" A broad grin split the blacksmith's face. "By the gods, man, it's been too long." "Hello, Ollie." Tem stopped about 10 feet from the furnace and returned the man's smile. "You look well, my friend." "Well enough, I suppose." Ollie gestured to a wide pile of stock iron. "Business has been brisk. I've more commissions than I can handle and no apprentice to help." He shook his head. "Each year takes a toll, I tell you, and each year I pay a larger price." Tem chuckled. "Still a bright ray of sunshine, I see." Ollie gave him a sly grin. "And you remain a purveyor of the obvious, Sir Tem the Riven. Admit it, we've grown old, and old men are set in their ways. Or maybe the heat has made you crotchety." Tem wiped the sweat from his forehead. "How do you stand it?" "Fire's my life." Ollie gestured to a pile of coal nearby. "Creating my works requires power, and power requires fuel. I work with fire, and coal is my fuel. I'd be a terrible smith if I ran out of coal. Wouldn't be able to do a damn thing." He shrugged as if he'd just explained the meaning of life. "You're simply not used to it, old man." Tem picked up an iron bar and tested the weight with both hands. "These are for swords. Have you finally given up shoeing old mares?" "I make what people request. Right now they want weapons." That suggested danger, threats. Tem tossed the iron back onto the pile where it clanged loudly against the others. "There's been trouble in town?" Ollie's eyes narrowed. His grin now looked forced, as if the slightest contradiction might crack it. Lowering his voice, he said, "What brings you home after so long?" Tem pulled a colored piece of cloth from his pouch, dabbed at the sweat beading his forehead, then tucked it over his belt so his friend could see the front, a gold field adorned with a red chevron. Ollie's grin faded. He cocked his head at Tem, looking more like a surly hen than a kindly blacksmith. "You wear the king's favor." Ollie hadn't phrased it as a question. "People have gone missing. His Majesty worries." Ollie spat on the ground. "You mean men have gone missing. Men the king needs for his armies. If they go missing, they can't fight him, can they? They can't win him his damned wars." Tem studied his friend. Still a powerful man, Ollie nonetheless bent beneath the weight of his considerations. He had seen 50 summers, 32 of them in this shop. Smithing wore a man down. He would have to retire soon, but to what? He'd been a widower for years, and neither of his sons had wished to follow in their father's footsteps. They joined King Beltran's army instead, only to die, far from home. The blacksmith bore his wounds of loss with him, reopening them occasionally so he didn't forget his misery. More than smithing ever would, the deaths of his sons had made Ollie an old man. Tim scratched his beard. Have any of the townsmen returned? No. Has anyone found any trace of them? Ollie hesitated, then shook his head. Well, someone has looked. Yes, of course, we sent our best trackers. You remember Delane, lean fellow with a bloodhound's nose? He led a handful of search parties, and each time they came back empty. Poor fellow was fit to be tied. Tim did remember Delane. As a tracker, the man had no equal. Carting away grown men should have left a trail a child could follow. Yet Delane had found nothing. How many have gone missing? Ollie set his hammer on the workbench. Why are you here? How many? Ollie stared at the forge, as if entranced by the glowing embers, then dropped his head and sighed. 60, just over. Tim gaped. 60? More than 120 men? And King Beltran only recently heard of this? Ollie noticed the silence and turned to face Tim. The smith's hands clenched and opened at his sides. Of all the knights in the realm, the king, that murderous bastard, sent you. Why? Tim returned the smith's hard stare. The Majesty's coin spends the same as any other. Ollie held his ground for a heartbeat more, maybe two. Then he seemed to forget his convictions. Turning away from Tim, he said, some things aren't worth the price. And this would be one of them. He removed the iron bar from the forge, inspected it, then thrust it back in again. How long have you been in town? Have you been to Estelle's house? He tried to make it sound casual, but failed. My first stop, Tim said. Well, when did she leave? Last year. She'd been unhappy for so long. The smith had confirmed the boy's words. Tim nodded. Did anyone see her leave? Not that I heard. People assumed she'd moved on. Moved on, as if she were nothing more than a minstrel in a traveling show. Tim knew better. Guilt and shame had bound his sister to Kith's Barrow as much as they had tried to bind him. Like Tim, she had tried for years to move on, but unlike him, she had never succeeded. That is, until a year ago, when she had found the resolve, the dignity, the humanity to shed that which had bound her, and without at least sending a word to her brother. Not damn likely. He let the question of his sister go. His interest lay in another woman. Tim said, when did men start to go missing? 6 months ago, of that I'm certain. Ollie's voice grew hesitant, even soft, as if he were afraid of his own boldness. Why are you here, Tim? The real reason, I mean, not that ridiculous story about spending the king's coin. I've known you my whole life. We've striven through difficult times together. I deserve better than a poorly conceived lie. He does, Tim thought, his heart heavy. But how do we survive if not by the lies we tell? Tim drew a breath. Rumors have reached His Majesty. Rumors of a witch. The smith straightened and let go the iron he'd been working. Damn it, man. Ollie's voice rose. Have you abandoned your senses? Even if you could find her, she wouldn't let you close. She'd kill you before you drew your sword. King Beltran gave me a charge, Tim said. I mean to complete it. You don't have to. She'll stop soon. She can't have need of many more town folk. Ollie sounded too desperate, too eager to turn him aside, which made no sense given he had no idea where these met. Tim grew cold despite the shop's sweltering heat. Delane found something, didn't he? Fear darkened Ollie's eyes. You've lived by the sword for years, but this is madness. Where is she hiding? She'll know you're coming. Tim hesitated. She'll know we're coming. Ollie stiffened, then his shoulders sagged. That's the real reason you're here, not to visit your old friend, but to get him killed. I will lay down my life to keep you alive, Ollie. You have my word. Tem pushed through the forge's heat to approach the man. Ali's ruddy skin had gone bone pale, and his strong hands trembled. He grasped Ali's arm and led him away. "Tell me," Tem said, "where I can find my daughter." Necessarily short because it's a short story, and that's it.
Wow, that is so cool. I love how you set up where they are and who they are and made us care about both of those guys. Well done. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
Very cool.
I probably read it a little too fast, but hey.
Hey, that's a good way to get more words in for us to listen to. I turn up my audiobooks to like almost twice the speed, so that's perfectly fine with me.
Mhm.
Yeah. I am very curious at the number of different genres that we've just heard about from you, talking about a cyberpunk anthology and
Yep.
a really cool book, The Forever Man, which is, a young woman missing in a police guy and there's a mysterious evil, and now sword and sorcery stuff. How do you enjoy writing so many different things?
Well, I've always considered myself a writer and not a horror writer or a science fiction writer or a fantasy writer. I just write, and I write what I like. I grew up on fantasy, actually, more than horror. I grew up reading Tolkien and Stephen Donaldson and Ray Zelazny and all of that. All of those wonderful people. Anne McCaffrey, oh, good grief, she's wonderful. So when the call came out for the Sword and Sorcery edition of Weird Tales, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try this.
Do it. Well, that
But
leads
actually,
right in.
this came about back in StokerCon 2021, the virtual StokerCon.
Right.
Yeah.
Because things that, started and stopped with them, I know, for Weird Tales. Now, Nick asked a question that, this leads right into: what kind of sword and sorcery inspires you? The big sprawling epics like Tolkien and GRRM or classic heroic fantasy. Yeah.
I read probably more epics than the classic heroic.
Okay.
Tolkien, obviously, a lot.
Yeah.
And again, Donaldson and Ray Feist. But I have read Michael Moorcock. I can't say anything, but that might have something to do with the cover that you saw at the beginning of this little intro. He may or may not make an appearance in the Weird Tales edition.
Well, that could be interesting to hear about. It should anything, be.
I tried to get permission to reveal who the other authors are. The only ones that have actually publicly announced it are David Fitzgerald and Dana Fredstein.
Okay.
They've got a story called Made of Steel that will be in there, but there's some pretty big names. That was pretty exciting to be part of that.
Well,
I'm a little more of an epic fantasy guy than a heroic fantasy guy.
Cool. Okay, that's good to know. But now, I'm going to go back to that first thing I mentioned, though, was a cyberpunk anthology, because that's how I got started doing more of my writing, was more science fiction and cyberpunk and such. So you had short stories paired with music. Now, was it punk music or was it other music?
No, it was other music.
Okay.
Someone in the chat named Jeff LaSala, who's a very good friend of mine, enticed me into writing for the first time with this anthology.
Right.
And we got to pick tracks on the CD. The CD was all done before the stories were started. And then we picked a track and we wrote to that track. And the song I liked so much was called Lament. And it was kind of a cool title for a story. So I wrote that story. And that kind of got me going. And then he and I co-authored a story called Graveduggery. And silly me, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. I'm going to write a book. So
I may have done that myself. Yeah.
So I wrote Forever Man and sold it. Sold the first book I wrote, which is really kind of rare.
Go ahead, make us all look bad. Yeah. No, that's great. That's tremendous. And that was in 2013 that originally came out, right?
Yes. Yeah. And there's the reissue now. The amazing Lynn Hansen is doing, got the rights back to Forever Man Revelation, which is the second novel. and Conveyance, which is a third novel, but not Forever Man novel. She's doing the covers for those re-releases.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to hear about the re-release, you know, that,
So, and no, go on.
no, I know working with Lynn is really cool because she reads the book and actually puts a great cover based upon the story. You know, so what was the experience like to revisit it after, you know, X number of years?
It kind of a little cringy looking at one of my new writer mistakes. So I went back and I kind of edited some of them out, which was fun.
Yeah.
And then there's parts where I'm like, wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
And then she's working on the Revelation, the second Forever Man novel. She's working on the cover right now. Well, not right now. She's a killer con.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then I went with science fiction type horror and Conveyance. And then I wanted to do a fantasy thing. So here we are with Tem the Ribbon.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. So you're tapping your toe in all the different waters. Yeah. I have one last question for you, and it's based on something that I saw happen to the two of us. I know you have a background as a psychologist, and how does that influence the way you write? I'm just thinking of the time we were walking from dinner and we noticed a person who was clearly having difficulties, and we may have been the only two who noticed it out of that group.
Right. Yeah.
How does that affect the way you write characters?
Oh, probably I kind of delve a little bit more into what made them, or what circumstances made them, because I don't believe people are born bad. I really don't. Usually it's the environment that impacts them so much. So like what we experienced just recently when we were walking back from dinner, the part of me was, wow, what happened there? And then you get a story idea from it. Okay, how could that have happened to that unfortunate person? But like Conveyance, the main character is a psychologist. I wonder where that came from. The other person is a cop, and my brother's a cop, so I wonder where that came from. So I'm kind of rambling here, but it's just the system, the environment. I probably look at more than an individual's single psychology. It's called systems theory, but it just how everybody interconnects and how it impacts and how it can change. I guess that's my best answer for that.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very cool. And we have an interesting comment that just confirms that. Conveyance is heavily based on Brian's experience, from this wonderful woman named Sue Matthews. She seems very smart and very bright, I have to say.
Yeah, she's in the living room right at the moment. So.
Yeah. Well, listen, when we're done here, I want you to go back and look at all the wonderful comments in the chat, because people said some nice things about your reading and your work. So
I turned it off because I get terrified of reading comments, and
you can look at it later. Yeah.
Look at it a little later.
Yeah. Well, terrific. Thank you so much for sharing your words and your thoughts, Brian. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah, you'll be back in a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next reader. Nancy Holder is a New York Times bestselling author of dozens of books and hundreds of short stories. She's a former vice president and member of the board of trustees of the Horror Writers Association, a recipient of 7 Bram Stoker Awards. She received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Horror Writers Association this year. In 2019, she was named a Grandmaster of Tie-in Fiction by the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. She's well known for writing material for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, and many other TV shows, and has novelized movies such as Crimson Peak and Wonder Woman. She's currently working on comics, graphic novels, and pulp fiction with her writing partner, Alan Philipson. And I just want to mention that the author photo in our intro video is by Sue Kellerman. You can find out more about Nancy Holder at nancyholder.com.
To get that and keep it, I swear. Hello, Halloween people. How are you? I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I have another image from my Johnny Fade, that I'm showing you. I was in Comicopolis in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and with our artist John Snyder, John K. Snyder III. This is Johnny Fade in Dead Town. This is the short story we based our comic series on. So this is a little bit of exploration, and I love it. So I'm going to read it, and here I go. Johnny Fade in Dead Town by Nancy Holder and Alan Philipson. Los Angeles, 1940. A pair of searchlights swept overhead, white spider legs crawling across a somber night sky. Around the corner on Hollywood Boulevard, the musical Moonlight Over Mexico was premiering at the Egyptian in Technicolor. A band of light from the moving beams crept back and forth across the alley's brick walls, casting everything in stark black and white. As he leaned against the unmarked Studebaker's driver door, John Fade lit another smoke. Across the narrow lane, a pair of sewer rats chased each other, squeaking as they tipped over a clutch of empty wine bottles someone had lined up along the base of the wall. Foreplay. Through the open car window, a deadpan voice crackled over the police band radio. Armed robbery at a liquor store in Western, his precinct, but not his call to answer. No one had died. Up on Hollywood, car horns started honking. The premiere was finally letting out, fans cheering and whistling as celebrities in tuxedos and evening gowns made their exits into rows of waiting limousines. It was a short walk from the Egyptian to the alley. Even in towering high heels and a slinky sequin sheath, Lindsay would be here any minute. Excuse me. The Devore chemical heiress had insisted on meeting him after tonight's premiere, even though she knew the tight spot he was in. She'd said she'd found new evidence about her father's suicide and had to deliver it in person. She said it couldn't wait. Against his better judgment, he had agreed. That was how much he needed to see her again. So far, no one had tried to collect the contract out on his head. $6,000 could buy a decent house in Venice Beach or finance a year-long bender south of the border. That the grand prize had gone unclaimed for months spoke to his caution and his history with a sidearm. The horn stopped honking. Time dragged on. He checked his watch again. Still no sign of Lindsay. Maybe she was waiting for her best friend Rachel to finish signing autographs. The musical was the Mexican Spitfire's first major role. A big deal. When the rats paused in mid-scamper for a quick mount, nip, and piercing shriek, Fade flicked his cigarette butt at them. It hit the wall in a shower of sparks. The pair froze for a second, then resumed the frantic chase round and round the cans and over the walls. Memories of his one-night stand with Lindsay lit up the inside of his head like the big finish of 4th of July fireworks. And for a split second, he could still taste her, feel her moving under him. The frenzy that trashed a Culver City motel room and left bruises and bite marks on both sides seemed 1,000 years ago. Her sainted tycoon father freshly dead by hanging, the subsequent investigation into a possible homicide that went nowhere, and Spiro Zorba looming just out of reach. Lindsay's family tragedy wasn't what had pushed Fade over the line. It was what had landed in his lap a few weeks later. The Griffith Park massacre. 7 homicides in one night in the observatory's parking lot. 3 gang-related executions and 4 innocent civilians, stargazers, 2 of them just kids. One look at Zorba's mug as he strutted out of the courtroom a free man, and 10 years as a Hollywood homicide detective and a 20-year career on what passed for the right side of the law went out the window. They'd had the mob boss cold on 7 counts of first-degree murder, and he still walked. The shooter who turned state's evidence and fingered Zorba as the ringleader and a participant was found dead in a holding cell before he could testify. A suicide by hanging, just like Lindsay's father. The fix was in. Everybody turned a convenient blind eye to the contradictions in evidence, how the prisoner got his belt back, the unaccounted for injuries to his face and hands. Everybody but Fade. Simple fact. A person who knows police work, who knows how the gears fit and what makes them turn. A person like that who decides to cross over is the worst enemy you can ever have. So, in 2 days, Spiro Zorba would be shackled and dragged from his cell on death row, strapped to the gas chamber's hard wooden armchair, and executed for the one crime he surely didn't commit. Although the mob boss had never unraveled who was behind the frame, Fade's trial testimony under oath had sealed his fate. The contract was payback for that, and there was a hefty bonus if Fade died first. Without Lindsay's help, he could never have pulled off the frame. Zorba and his mob had gotten their claws deep into Devore Chemical prior to her father's death, something more likely the result of blackmail than a predatory stock takeover. Lindsay was fixated on getting justice for Daddy and the criminals out of her company and life forever. When Fade had floated the possibility of her working as his off-the-books confidential informant, her enthusiasm for putting her pretty neck on the chopping block had set off alarm bells. There was nothing she wouldn't risk, nothing she wouldn't do to get her own back. Lindsay DeVore refused to believe Daddy had hanged himself, and that case wasn't really closed if she had a pet cop digging into it on the sly. What better way to keep a guy like him on a string than an all-night, no questions asked sex marathon? She fed him information. Oh, she fed him like crazy. But he sensed there was a lot more. If she was holding back, playing her own game, so was he. He never shared the true purpose of the intelligence she was providing. That would have implicated her in the crime, made her a target for both the law and the mob, and made it much less likely to succeed. He had led her to believe that in the end she would get everything she was after, even though that wasn't part of his plan. Toppling the boss did not fix her problem with the mob. Zorba's number 2 man, Alvin Grossbinder, was embedded deep at Devore Chemical, which had banked millions with its popular house cleaning products. The bullet-headed Letcher couldn't keep his hands off Lindsay, even though she had threatened to hack off his favorite body part with a box cutter. Fate had assured her after Zorba's sentencing that he was building a case against the whole organization, that it was about to fall. Likewise, she had assured him that if he succeeded, many more trash motel rooms were in their future. The truth was, he had built only one case, and that was against Zorba himself. Delivering on his problem to free her from the mob was beyond his power, and if she hadn't figured that out already, she was bound to soon enough. He checked his watch again. Where the hell is she? Headlights blazed around the bend of the alley on his left. Fade tipped down the brim of his fedora to block the glare and reached inside his suit coat for his shoulder-holstered Colt 1911. Unsnapping the holster's thumb strap, he braced his feet. The glow of searchlights lit up the front end of a shiny black or dark blue 4-door Packard with fat white walls. It was a heavy, expensive car, probably a chauffeured celebrity from the premiere taking the back way to Las Palmas to avoid the traffic snarl on Hollywood Boulevard. Fade hesitated, not wanting to flash heat at some passing movie big shot. He couldn't see that the passenger side windows were rolled down until it was almost on top of him, and then it was too late. The ugly snouts of a pair of Tommy guns poked out over the front and rear window frames. As the Colt cleared leather, machine guns clattered, spitting fire and belching clouds of smoke. A slew of .45 caliber slugs chewed up the front end of the Studebaker, rattling it, blowing out the headlight, windshield, and tire. There was no cover, nowhere to run. Fade took aim as his body jerked under the hail of lead, and his first and only shot went wild. His chest exploded in excruciating pain, and he felt himself sliding helplessly down the side of the car. The Packard slowed, giving the shooters a few extra seconds to make sure he would never, ever get up. Then the gunfire stopped. Cheek pressed to the pavement, he saw the big car speed off, brake lights flaring as it cut a squealing right turn out of the mouth of the alley. As he lay there, blood seeping from too many wounds to count, it took all his strength just to breathe in and out. 2 sets of high heels furiously clicked over the asphalt. Lost in the pain, he had no idea how much time had passed. Johnny! Johnny! Oh my God, Johnny! He looked up, Lindsay in her tight emerald satin gown, and behind her, brown eyes wide with fear, Rachel Alcina. The heiress sank to her knees beside him. Johnny, baby, what have they done to you? The rope of her pearls caught the creeping light as they swayed over his face. She pressed her hands flat against his chest, trying in vain to staunch the flow of blood. Over her shoulder, she shouted, Rachel, use his car radio, call for help. The actress wrenched open the bullet-holed driver door, and lunged across the bench seat. He could hear her shrieking into the handset. Hello, hello, help, please. Hello, is anyone there? Dios, nothing's happening, Lindsay. The radio's not working. It got hit. Run back to the theater, Lindsay said. Get an ambulance. Rachel jumped out of the car and raced away from them, the hem of her long strapless gown clutched up over her knees. Lindsay cradled his head in her lap. She looked like a ghost, her face, neck, and arms dead white in the searchlight's glare. Dark liquid stained the lap of her dress. His blood, pumping fresh, red as her shoulder-length hair, both turning black as the light swept past. Stay with me, it's going to be all right, she sobbed. It wasn't going to be all right, and Johnny knew it. He'd been shot once before, but not like this. The hitmen had got him good. He couldn't feel his feet or hands. All he could feel was the white-hot, cratering agony in the middle of his chest. How had Zorba's goons found him? He wasn't followed to the alley. He had made sure of that. He stared up at Lindsay's silhouette. Why had she shown up so late? Had she made a deal with the mob? His life for the return of her company? Vade's vision dimmed, hands and feet numb with cold. He struggled to raise his head and failed. It weighed 1,000 pounds. Lindsay moaned, almost like she meant it. Don't die, Donnie. Don't die. But he was dying, and quickly, like a guttering candle flame. When his heart stopped, he felt the final beat. Thud, then stillness. His lungs relaxed of their own accord, and a sigh of resignation passed between his lips. The excruciating pain faded to nothing. I'm fucking dead, and I feel fine. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Nancy.
I'm dead and I feel fine.
It's a great line to end on.
Oh, something interesting is going to happen after that.
Well, I hope so. I hope you think so.
Yeah, that was really fun. Very intense.
So now that you wrote the story, did you write the story with the idea of doing a comic in mind, or did that follow later?
I'm starting to forget, but what I think happened was I think we were invited to write a short story. I didn't bring any of the books with me, but we're part of Moonstone Books, has a group of pulp fiction anthologies, I guess you'd say, that are called Double Shots and Triple Shots. And we were invited to create something for a triple shot. And so we did. And so then we went to our publisher, Joe Gentile, and we said, could we make a comic of this? And meanwhile, we had written a couple more short stories, and we have more short stories that are coming out as we're trying to expand our Johnny Fade universe. And at some point in this story, he said, yes, you can make a comic book. So then we went back and forth with him about getting an artist, and we got the artist we wanted, and we're stoked. So I think it was innocently a short story before we got the comic book going.
That's great. Yeah, and it's nice that you got the artist that you wanted.
John, I know it's backwards, but it's John K. Snyder.
Oh, no, we see it. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. That's cool.
He's excellent. I've seen a lot of his comics. He's just really fantastic. Yeah.
Oh,
so now you're writing. Oh,
sorry. Here's it's the John Snyder show. 8 Million Ways to Die. Lawrence Block. Anyway, okay, all about me. Go ahead.
Well, that's funny because I was actually going to ask about you writing this in collaboration with Alan.
We've known each other forever and ever. And back in the day, we were in a writing group together, and so we reconnected over many years. Alan worked for a long time writing men's action science fiction-y kind of books under Alan Philipson and house names. And we just always had our own things going on, and somehow we finally meandered back to working together. So, but we've known each other for since 1878. So it's really fun to work together. And we work well together. We won't fight very often, but we do, but not very often.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm curious to think about how you go from a short story to a graphic novel or graphic representation. Do you reduce the scope of the story and focus on one part, or do you just reduce the pieces that you're showing of it?
That's a really good question. What we look for is the emotional center. I think it was Clay who was talking about this. You look for the heart of it, and you look for how the artist can show it, because that's the most important part of comic book land. Is with whom we communicate is the artist. We write a letter to the artist. That's where our script is. And so John, being
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
We'll say what we're trying to show is the agony of this, or the hopelessness of this. It's very, very noir. And it's weird because we'll text each other or email each other. And John, who lives in West Virginia, will be watching the exact same noir movie we're watching. And so, and we didn't plan it. And it's like, but so we have a deep, deep noir literacy among the three of us. And so it's very dark. And the idea is that the little tag is good guys don't go to hell. But everybody in the story so far, except for one person, has ended up in hell or worse. And or worse. And the crux is the Johnny Fade had a mentor, and this is his mentor right here. And his name is Marcus Sherman, named after my hero, Richard Sherman, the football player. And he is in the worst place, and Johnny Fade can't figure out how this sterling, best, most honest, straight cop there ever was ended up someplace so awful. So he's trying to figure out, A, what did he do to get there? And B, can he get him out of it?
Okay.
Exciting. Sounds great. So do you have a sense of how long the comic series will run?
Yes. The first series, we're hoping we're, finessing in our way into a long life here. But the first series will be 5 comics, and then they'll be collected into a graphic novel. So they'll come out as actual comic books like in the olden days, and then they'll be collected. And then it will be the whole story of the beginning of what we hope is a longer story. But
that's great.
There will be a conclusion.
Cool. So now you have written a lot of tie-in characters. I think you're very closely associated with Buffy. What are some others? I know Carol read in your bio, Wonder Woman. You wrote, I guess, the novelization of Crimson Peak. What are some of your favorite properties that you've gotten to work on?
Well, I will say Crimson Peak. Guillermo del Toro is one of us. He is a horror guy, and I watched a lot of interviews and read a lot about him, and he would list his influences just straight out. And it's everything we all have read, everything. And you'd go like, oh, I read that, I saw that movie. And his favorite thing, one of his favorite things in the world, is go to Disneyland and ride the Haunted Mansion. I mean, this is our guy. And so I just cried when I got to get the job, and I got to add my own thing to it. And they let me do what I wanted, and I was amazed and really thrilled. And so I will say Crimson Peak was one of the highlights, definite highlights. Another show I really, really liked was Saving Grace. And in it, Grace is pretty much Jesus. And she's going to hell. And her guardian angel comes and leads her on a better path. So I actually never thought of this, but in a way, it's kind of like the bizarro world of Johnny Fade. But it was a great show. Hated the last episode. Sorry, it was terrible. But it was a great show, really great show.
Yeah, that I missed that one. I've never seen it.
It's awesome. And and the opening, the theme song is killer.
Oh, okay. I'm curious to think about writing whatever you want versus writing something in a framework, let's just say, for tie-in writers. How does that help or hinder what you're writing? I can see it can also be a benefit because it gives you structure and direction. How does it work for you?
It gives you structure and direction. And for example, in Buffy, you could say, I want to write a mystery Buffy, or I want to write an adventure Buffy, or I want to write a romantic Buffy. And you go, okay. Whereas if you're known for something, if you're writing a series and then all of a sudden, the Mother of Dragons bursts into song, then everybody goes, what happened here? And that doesn't happen when you're writing in somebody else's universe, when it's a well-established universe. And the between us, among us in the professional world of tie-in writing, if a book doesn't do well financially, they don't blame you. They say, "Oh, the show's not popular." So that's really cool.
Wow.
It's like
So
a
they
get
don't
out of
blame you.
jail free card.
It is.
Yeah, like easy out. Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, that's
nice.
cool. That's
Do you
good
have
to
to
know.
do you do or have to do a lot of research when you write these properties? Like, do you have to watch all of the episodes and all of
Oh
the
yeah. When all of us, I had collaborators and wrote by myself for Buffy and Angel. We get the scripts FedEx to us. I felt very Hollywood. I go outside with my coffee and there was my script from FedEx. But in those days, if you remember, we didn't have pre-recorded sets of episodes, so I had to watch the broadcast episode, which I would get a CD, a VCR thing. What do we call it? Cassette. I get
Yeah,
a
tape, yeah.
No, they would charge the publisher $25 for those things. Anyway, I would get the cassette, or I would record it myself, and I would sit there and I would actually annotate the script by hand because the script you get is often not the same as what is broadcast. There are changes all the way through until they throw it up on the screen. So you never knew, and like Nicholas Brendan would make a joke and it would be an impromptu thing. And then you go, great. And so then you put it in. And so sometimes the scripts we got were a little behind and there would be revelations on a show that we didn't know about. That was weird, but it didn't happen a lot. But yeah, it was funny because a lot of it was sitting down and taping it ourselves on Monday night or Tuesday night, whenever Buffy was on. It was very, very much less, no things. Nothing was emailed ever. So,
yeah. So I imagine you had to really be on top of things, or the fans would catch you.
Well, the nice thing was, nice and weird. They didn't have a show Bible. They didn't have descriptions of their characters and then how the town was laid out. Christopher Golden and I created the first Bible for them. They used what we wrote, and it was called The Watcher's Guide. The Watcher's Guides, there were 3 of them. We did 2 of them. And we did the episodes and all the information, that little pop-ups and all this jazz. And we knew that show inside and out. And we went on the set a lot. And we got to, we walked down the hall of the school, and I would speak into a tape recorder about everything we saw. And it was amazing. I mean, we got good access, but there wasn't a lot of prelim data. So we were on the ground floor, and I knew that show 100%. I mean, people would do trivia contests, and I would win my own book as the prize. But I will say, if anybody's interested in doing this, a really cool trick is if you're watching the show and you've watched it and you've heard it, watch it again with the sound off. Because TV is a visual medium, and you'll see so many things that they deliberately do visually that you might not notice if you're watching it and listening to the words. That was always my trick, and it's you see all kinds of cool stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to try that sometime. I think Carol, do you have any other questions? I had one last quick question before we bring the other readers
I
on,
just have one quick one then. How do you do inspiration for the scenes that you're writing when they're not based on something like that? How do you set things in your head when you're writing something that's not a tie-in piece? What inspires you?
I guess like everybody else, a lot of times when I'm writing horror, I deliberately scare myself, and it's very easy because I'm a huge chicken, huge. Lisa Martin, our former president, told me, twice removed, told me about a movie, A Tale of Two Sisters, the Korean version. It scares the crap out of me. And so when I'm getting started to write, I put it on my screen, on my laptop, and I watch it. And it truly, I've seen it so many times, it still freaks me out. I still have to watch it kind of like this. And I get to the part that really, really, really scares me, and then I turn it off, and then I start working.
Oh, that's a neat trick.
That's cool. That's cool. You put yourself right in that.
For years. Oh, well.
Yeah.
So my last question was just a quick one. Was are you a fan of the original Buffy movie at all?
Of the what?
The original Buffy movie versus the TV series.
It's been a long time since I've seen the original Buffy movie. I did see it, and I did think it was really stupid. So I'm probably not a fan of the original Buffy movie. But there are a lot of weird, very interesting little tidbits and little popular culture things that are very interesting about the movie. Like there are people on the back cover who ended up on the TV show but weren't cut out of the movie. All kinds of cool stuff like that. So
Oh, that's neat. I didn't know that.
yeah, it's
Okay.
really cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much for reading with us.
Welcome.
I think we're going to have Brian and Clay come back to join us for some wrap up and to hear what everyone else has coming up. So
Thank
here's
you.
Brian
Yeah, thank you, Nancy.
and
Yeah.
Clay.
Hi,
All
boys.
right. Welcome
Hey
back.
guys, welcome back.
So
Yeah.
the audience, if you have any questions for anybody, feel free to throw them in the chat. Clay, it was funny. I meant to comment on one line in your reading, and I forgot when we were doing Q&A, but it's the line about get a tune.
Yes.
And it's a great line. When you read that, I just heard it in Jeffrey Combs' voice. Sort of doing his best Herbert West.
Now I'm getting some interesting reverb here.
Yeah.
Somebody's got YouTube.
Let's see. We're getting some in.
I don't know. Clay, try muting yourself. Did it go away? Oh, something doesn't like us on Clay's system.
Okay.
Sorry
If
about
you
that.
have the YouTube channel open, Clay, it'll echo. No? Okay.
Yeah.
Or Facebook Live, one of the two.
All right. Well, it could just be an actual gremlin.
I think,
technical
it
difficulty.
could be just somebody's possessed computer. What the heck?
That's
Yeah,
it.
mine is possessed all the time. Yeah, so we'll have to have Clay do all of his answers in interpretive dance. So that will be just fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that may help. Yeah.
So what do you have coming up? I guess we can start with Clay because you were our first reader, and I know now has Ghost Eaters been released or is it forthcoming?
Has not been released. It's out. Books can be out in.
All
I
right.
think a ghost ate his voice.
We're getting
Yeah.
we're getting some
Really?
like
Am I real?
yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome.
You sound like every evil robot in the 1980s.
Of my book.
Wow.
Cool.
All right. So
All right.
I see
Sorry.
looking on Amazon that the release date for Ghost Eaters is September 20th. So I hope that's part of the answer that we're looking at here. Okay. And
I have to
just
pull that one out.
since he can't talk, I just put the Amazon link in there that will an original Cylon. Yes.
Thank
But
you,
it's
thank you,
taking a
Carol.
minute to post. Yeah.
That's great.
So cool.
And Brian, we know you have Weird Tales coming up.
Yeah.
Any news on that?
Other than the cover that was shown today, that was the first time it's been publicly shown. My understanding is later this month it's supposed to be set, and this is not even open for pre-order yet.
Okay.
But hopefully by Jonathan Mayberry told me hopefully by the end of this month.
Great. Okay, so we'll look for that. Do you remember offhand what the issue number is?
366.
Okay, Weird Tales 366.
Yep.
So keep your eyes peeled for the awesome Bob Eggleton cover and Brian's story.
Yeah, lots of good stories in there. I think there's a poem by T.L. James Glenn, if I remember right, too.
Oh, exciting.
Yes,
I think
I
T.L.'s
believe
in
so.
the audience, maybe.
I believe he is. Yeah, I can't wait to see this issue. It's going to be fantastic, and that cover is gorgeous.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's going to be fun.
yeah, and it was cool to see just the artwork without even the words on it yet. So I can't wait to see it all put together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
And Nancy, I know we've already talked a little bit about Johnny Fade, but do you have anything else coming up you can share with us?
Yeah, actually, Alan and I both wrote short stories for an anthology that I always misname. It's Dracula Unfanged, but I always say Dracula Unchained, but it's not Dracula Unchained. It's Dracula Unfanged. And based on his story, we got an offer from an Australian company that's just starting up in comics. They've been doing prose for a while, to do a graphic novel comic book series on his character, Metzonote. So it's going to be called They Call Me Midnight. And he's a vigilante vampire working for the mob, and it starts in Las Vegas in 1970.
Neat.
So, yeah.
That sounds fun. Now, is Dracula Unfanged available now?
Yes, it just hit Amazon. Christopher Sekira, our editor, just came over to promote it and at Comic-Con, and then he got COVID.
Oh, no.
So he's back in Australia now.
Sorry.
Oh, and I should say also, maybe some of you were in it, but there's a Kolchak 50th anniversary doorstop. And Alan and I have a story in that. And we also have a story in an anthology that's the marking the anniversary of Kolchak and the 100th anniversary of the movie of Nosferatu. So we've been very busy working together, writing a lot of short stories in addition to our comic.
Lots of vampires and supernatural investigators. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So if you guys know Lynn Hansen, I just bought a bat dress from Lynn, who's
I have the skull dress. Yeah.
Dress.
So
Oh yes, we know Lynn. She's great. Such a terrific artist.
Yeah, she is.
We all need to wear them on the same day at Stoker.
I am for it, and I said we'll be the Hansenettes.
Yep.
So, and I see Lee Murray has a story in Unfanged too. Awesome.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, and I'm writing an afterwards for Black Cranes, which is the anthology that Lee and Genevieve, I think Flynn, co-edited, that just won a Stoker. So I believe that won a Stoker. They were sitting with like 15 Stokers at the Curtis there. So
yeah.
And those rooms were kick out. I can't say that. Yeah, those rooms were scary. I can say kick ass. Can I say that?
Yeah,
Sure
that's
you can.
we're good.
Yeah.
That was a movie title, so it's now officially off the restricted list.
Yeah. Well, Jim, what do you have coming up?
That's a good question. I never know what I'm doing or what's coming or whether I'm coming or going, but I have the last book in my Corpse Fauna cycle of pulp Living Dead stories is coming out hopefully this fall. It's we're just waiting on the cover. It's called The Eyes of the Dead. And then Spec Books is going to collect that into an omnibus, limited edition hardcover omnibus, the Corpse Fauna Chronicles. And I have a story in the graphic novel anthology that Nancy mentioned, celebrating Kolchak's 50th anniversary. I got to write the last Kolchak story. So I'm very interested to see how that goes over with readers and fans. Right.
Yeah.
And Carol, what have you got cooking?
I have something very exciting. I have a fast turnaround horror charity anthology that I've been working on. I'm co-editing it with Rachel Brune from Crone Girls Press. It benefits reproductive health care services, and it's called A Woman Unbecoming. And we may have a cover we could show, Jim, I believe, which is kind of cool.
Let me check.
So I'm putting a link because I put a link in the chat for our cover reveal. We have a Lynn Hansen cover that we've grabbed for this, which is very cool and exciting. It's basically stories of righteous rage, anger, and vengeance. And some of our local friends have stories in this as well. Teal James Glenn has another poem in this. He's written so many books and stories, but he's got a poem. And some of our other New York folks as well. We've got an introduction coming from Gwendolyn Keist. We've got Jeff Strand. We've got Karina Bissett and Bridget Nelson, all sorts of great folks. Linda Addison, Lee Murray, who's also here on our audience. We're starting out with her poem because it's just freaking awesome. So that's what's coming up. And we're doing this anthology in 2 months. Releases on 2 months. Releases on August 23rd. So I'm very excited.
Well, I can't find the cover file to bring up. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. I put the link in there for the
Great.
Yeah, for the cover reveal, but it's a gorgeous cover by Lynn.
All right. And Clay, I saw you reset your earphones. Do you want to give us another try and tell us what you're up to? Or all right, everybody, brace yourselves.
2, 3.
Oh my.
I'm so sorry, Clay. That we've never had that happen before.
Like Jimmy Wentworth said, he's the original Cylon.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's too
But
crazy.
definitely, everyone look for Ghost Eaters. And Clay, you can nod. Do you have more comic projects coming up? He does. Oh, but he got it. But you can't talk about him yet. Okay.
Oh, well, see, that's why the sound thing came in. I think it was put in by the publisher just to make sure,
That's
you know.
it. Ultron intervened.
Yeah, that's clearly it. Well, there's one more cool thing that we're doing. Clay and I are both taking part in something on Saturday, along with Teal James Glenn. It's called Rot Fest. Don't just rot and fester. And this is a really cool event in Highland Park, New Jersey. Basically, it's a book truck with a stage on the back and fire eaters and all sorts of cool things. And so Teal and I have a short reading, and Clay gets a longer piece after us. And there's all sorts of wacky shows, and it's just really, really cool. So take a look for that. There's a Facebook event for it, and all. It's by Alex Dawson, and he's got a gorgeous, it's a drivable book truck with a movable stage on it. So very cool. So yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, this is good. We'll have Clay do the motions and I'll do the sound effects. I think we'll drive everybody out of the audience when we do
That's
this.
We're going to do a special Galactic Terrors where it's just Carol and Clay.
Wow. Well, that'll be Saturday. Yeah, we'll get Teal in there too. Yeah. All right, guys. This is so much fun.
So thank you all for joining us tonight. Please look for Galactic Terrors every second Thursday of the month. You can like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That helps you get notifications. You can, yes, I already said click subscribe, but I have to say it again. You can also sign up for our newsletter or join the Facebook group. We try not to spam, but we do try to share information about who's reading and what they're up to and when we'll be on the air. And next month, September 8th, we will be featuring Eric T. Johnson, Jonathan Lees, and Wendy N. Wagner. So this should be a pretty good reading coming up in September as well. We hope that you will join us for that. And Galactic Terrors is made possible by a grant from the Ford Foundation. No, I'm just kidding. The PBS days, but no, by the HWA NY chapter. So the New York chapter of the Horror Association sponsors Galactic Terrors, and you're welcome to check out our website and see what we're up to.
Very exciting, very terrific. So as we said, we will pull 3 names. We already have some new people who've joined the newsletter already tonight. So thank you, everybody. And feel free to, jump on the newsletter and get your name in there. We will pull 3 names and let people know in the morning who's won those 3 ebooks from us. So very cool. Thanks, everybody.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, hold on. I'm having a little bit of a...
It's...
That is weird.